Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious. Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Well, welcome to this podcast review for August 20th, 2024, and I am JD Duran. Brendan could not be here, unfortunately, due to timing and scheduling. He's very busy, and he's about to go on vacation, so he wasn't able to see the film we're about to talk to, so I scoured the internet, and I found the perfect individual to join me for this conversation. So I am delighted to bring back to the show the great Ben Miller from the Target Audience Podcast. Ben, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. You ready to go 8.5 hours?
Yes, let's do it. Maybe we can break 9. Who knows?
This is coming straight off of the guys at the guys at Screen Drafts know what they're doing. But 8.5 hours is insane.
Yeah,
that's an insane idea. But we'll try to keep it at least under the runtime of the film at least. Maybe. Yeah,
hopefully. We can aim for that.
Okay,
yeah, I think we can at least try to get this under. What is it? An hour and 40 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, 105, 145. Yeah, hour 45. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Yeah, we can certainly manage that. We'll attempt to. At any rate, it is great to have you here. I, of course, always love talking to you, but it's especially interesting this time around because you wrote the review for Sing Sing at InSessionFilm.com as well.
I did.
So there's that tie-in, and I'm always looking to plug. So
yes, I appreciate that.
Love that you're here just for that alone, and to hear your thoughts. If anyone.
Any chance to pimp my own writing, I'm all for it. Like,
exactly.
Believe it or not, just being obviously you're on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can tell this is not what got me here. All it's everything else. It has to do with my personality and my writing. Somehow people attracted to me, whatever.
Yeah, well, that's why we love to have you on the team. It's the magnetism. People are drawn.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And it's very exciting. So, yeah, we're going to be diving into Sing Sing, which is a film that I feel like has been garnering a lot of praise since it premiered at TIFF last year, I believe it was.
Yes.
And heard nothing but great things about it. And, I was curious if it was going to get a release last year because Colman Domingo had a pretty big year last year himself. But A24, that is, they pushed the film to this year. And, I'm very excited to get into this film. Before we do, I guess outside of that preliminary setup there, did you have any sort of expectations for Sing Sing? Was it on your radar?
Yeah.
What did you think?
So I remember whenever it came out at TIFF last year, I didn't go to TIFF, but I had heard all this stuff about it and heard how great it was and kind of it was kind of like a sprinkling of stuff, not like I don't want to say it's not like a lot of people didn't see it. Like a lot of times at TIFF, people will go see the stuff that is like Oscar heavy that year, and then they get surprised with other stuff that is just kind of lumped in. And this was kind of seemed like something that was just kind of lumped in, and obviously. I would imagine probably Oscar strategists probably decided it's like, it's probably best if we want to push this next year just because Domingo's going to be the face of this. So pushing it off, and it's like, okay, so that was kind of on my radar initially. And then the Dallas International Film Festival was back in May, and they announced it was going to be there. And it was like, it was immediately like, well, the Dallas International Film Festival being in Dallas, it's the opportunity to see it way earlier. So that was one of the things I was like, I got to go see it then.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very exciting. I would have taken advantage of that too, if it was me. So I've been itching to see this one, and the release has been a little bit weird, at least for us here in South Florida, because the potential release, or maybe got a very small limited release back in July, like mid-July.
Yeah.
So I reached out to some reps to try to understand what the strategy was. And before I went on vacation, which was part of it, because I knew I was going to be gone for a week, I wanted to try to see this as soon as I could. And I was told it's going to be released August 2nd. So
yeah.
then August 2nd comes, it does not get a wide release.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, where is this movie?
Yeah.
Like, come on, A24, I'm dying to see it.
Yeah.
And finally, I heard back that it was going to come out a couple of weeks after that. So even though, according to, like, you look up on IMDb, it says A24 released this on July 12th. No. I mean, kept checking since July 12th every week routinely, and it wasn't until mid-August that we actually got this movie.
Even this last weekend, it's expanded to 112 theaters. And I don't necessarily think this is a bad tactic for the long run, because this is definitely like, if you release it in wide theaters and it kind of sputters, I imagine it might kill the momentum. But if you have this slower release, especially like a lot of prognosticators have this on a lot of lists. So it's one of those things like, maybe we can try to eke this out and all the way till December and just slow burn this as best we can. Maybe that's the idea.
It's not a bad strategy for a movie like this. I can understand if that is indeed what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Either way, it worked for me because I have been salivating for this. So every week since July, when is this film coming? Please give it to me.
Yeah.
So I have been highly anticipating it. So also what's interesting, I want to note this up front. So, when we get into the review, we can just talk about the movie on its own terms. But what's really interesting about this movie is that it is based on the real life rehabilitation through the arts program at the Sing Sing maximum security prison. And it features a bunch of alumni from the program, individuals that were in the security prison, that were in the program. They are a big part of the cast here. And also the way they have approached this film financially is that every one of those alumni have their hands in the pot. So they all get a piece of the cookies in the cookie jar for whatever this film does financially. And maybe, to your point, that's why they've been very meticulous about rolling this out, so that way they can maximize whatever financial gain they can on this film. And if that is indeed what they're doing, all the power to them. I definitely want the movie to succeed.
I agree.
I thought that was cool.
And there's a really great Mia Lupo has a great article on the Hollywood Reporter talking about how the pay works for this film. And it's pretty cool. Like, it's a cool little like staging system of like, if you're a producer and the star and this and that, like, you get certain levels of it. Like, it's not like, oh, everybody's paid the same. It's like, but if you do multiple jobs, you like it makes sense whenever the story comes through. And it's just a cool, it feels like it's a unique approach to a problem that is obviously very rampant in Hollywood of how do you make money? How do you pay everybody who needs to be paid?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that was quite unique with this film as well. Yeah. So did want to highlight that. With all of that said, let's go ahead and jump into this. Sing Sing is directed by Greg Kwedar, and it stars Colman Domingo, Clarence Macklin, Paul Raci, Sean San Jose, and a bunch of others that come and go throughout the film. Again, alumni that was in the program. If you're not familiar with Sing Sing, as I noted, this is about Divine G, who was imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he did not commit. They actually write that in the synopsis.
Yes,
So, not a spoiler. Yeah. For a crime he did not commit, he finds purpose by acting in a theater group alongside other incarcerated men in this story of resilience, humanity, and the transformative power of art. All right, let's jump into this. Ben, what do you think about Sing Sing?
It's always hard to see, like, whenever you're sitting watching a movie, you're like kind of I personally approach it as like, as I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, this is really something. And as it goes along, and I'm like, it's just going places I'm not expecting it to go. And I find this movie like quietly revolutionary in its portrayal of male sensitivity. Like
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things where films are just not okay. Like you think of prison movies in general, the idea of prison movies, it's all about keeping your guard up, all about not
Yes.
putting a face down, and all about how you're portrayed. And the reality of this film is that all these guys get to be a calmer presence, a more a more intimate presence in a non-sexual way, just very like comfort between brotherly comfort essentially. And it's just it's not a kind of vulnerability you see shown in films. And as I was watching it, I was just blown away by how good and comfortable so many non-professional actors are in this film. Obviously, you have Racy, you have Domingo, you have some others, but I mean, like, nobody misses. There's no at no point I'm like, well, that guy's not a professional actor. Like, I assume after the credits rolled, you're like, okay, well, these guys are obviously graduates, but you didn't know that before you come into the film. Everybody is just so on point with what the film is trying to say, and I think it's probably it's my favorite film of 2024 so far.
Okay. Yeah, I absolutely love this as well. I think it is one of the most beautiful films of the year.
Absolutely.
And what's so striking about the film is its fervent sincerity, because on its
Absolutely.
face, there isn't anything new here that we haven't seen before in terms of these characters using art as a vehicle to express
Sure.
themselves and
Sure.
cope with the choices they've made and how they've ended up where they are, which, by the by, that is something I love generally. I love when movies explore the power of art and how
Sure.
it moves us, how it allows us to see ourselves and the world and give us new perspective. That's what makes the medium of cinema so engrossing to me. So seeing that here is exciting enough, but there's something about seeing these prisoners who might not otherwise have hope use theater in such an honest way that deeply exhibits the truth of who they are. That is remarkably poignant in this film, and it's complemented by a loose, free flowing structure that allows these characters to naturally tap into who they are as artists in this program. So many of the scenes in this film are them just riffing and clearly having fun. And it's really great to see that camaraderie, how they bond. And to your point, how they're able to understand something about their masculinity that they probably didn't know beforehand,
Yeah.
certainly before entering this program, for sure. And the
Yeah.
performances are really great in bringing that out. I wholly agree. Colman Domingo is sensational in this film. Honestly, it's one of my
Sensational.
favorite performances of the year. His dynamic with Clarence is really touching. I'm sure we'll talk about that more as
Yeah.
we go. They're completely different characters, those two, but the intersection of their arcs is some of the best storytelling in 2024. It's really great. I'm with you. A special film for sure.
Yeah, and it's the funny thing about it is you're kind of watching it and you're just like, yes, these guys are in prison, but you're like, how much like they don't linger too much on like the bad of prison. Like they probably have a little more freedom than a average prisoner because of this program. But that being said, they still go out of their way to be like, this is still not a place you want to be. Like the pressures and stresses of everything eventually boil up, and it's always just too much. And even like Domingo's character, Divine G, he's so settled, and you're just like, you kind of have an expectation of the character he is. He's the steady hand, he has it under control, and then it kind of like doesn't unravel. It just the pressure gets to him a little more than he's used to keeping. The facade he's keeping is starting to crumble a tad, and
Yeah.
that pressure goes back and forth. And I think there's like there's a really interesting sentiment of obviously his crime he did not commit. That's not like the driving force of his character, but it is a factor. And that propulsion is one of the reasons, like, he's like, I have to keep moving forward. And the thing that's stopping him and back and forth, like it's the thing that he keeps doing. It's his reason for keeping going. And obviously the program being another thing as well. It's a fascinating dynamic.
It is. And I think what's interesting about the cross section of this being a prison movie,
Yeah.
but it also acting as a deconstruction of male bravado, especially
Yeah.
in the context of prison culture. Again, it all circles back to that sincerity. This theater program being this haven away from the cold reality of prison life. And you're right, we do see some of that unfold with these characters, but I love that the film doesn't get bogged down in prison movie cliches as it relates to that prison volatility. There's the parole hearing scene with Divine G later on in the film, and similarly, we find Divine G helping Clarence with his own hearing that's coming up. But those are small moments here. Most of this film emphasizes the importance of art and theater and how it's helped these guys find new purpose in their life. And because there's something inherently hopeful about that, I think the film rightly focuses on the emotional truth with these characters instead of that prison volatility.
Yeah.
And as a result, there is this warmth that embraces this film that I really do love when we see them rehearsing their scenes for this play they're trying to put on. There's moments of them talking about the structure of the play. What does it mean to them individually? They give each other notes and honest feedback about their performances. And most importantly, we get these phenomenal moments of them discussing how the art informs their lives, or the antithesis and how their lives inform the art.
Yeah.
One of the best moments of the film, and forgive me, I can't remember the character's name, but one of them has this emotional catharsis where he's talking about how we're here to be human again.
Yeah.
We might have lost ourselves at some point in our life, which is why we ended up here. But through this program and through these performances, we're trying to find our humanity. And it's this gorgeous moment that your opening thoughts, we just don't really see in prison movies all that much.
Yeah.
And the male vulnerability that we see in these characters, it really is something to see.
It's even something where, like you said, it's the teaching how to be human is kind of it's not like these people are animals and they're getting past it. That it never really, it doesn't really delve into the reasons they're there, even though it touches on it a little bit. Like they are very self-aware of their mistakes, but not dwelling on it. Yeah. And at the same time, the entire program is designed to be like, it's the realities of prison are skewed for this specific program. Like, they don't say the N-word. They say beloved instead as a substitute for it. And talking about, they have the programs they're in these programs, and they'll have women on stage, and a guy makes a crude comment, and he's like, there are coworkers. It's like, it's shut down immediately. It's not, there is no inroad to inhumanity. It's all under the surface of, like, we are here to be artists. The fact that we're locked up is a moot point, frankly. It's just...
Absolutely. And I think that's great about how this film uses art to give these guys new perspective on their lives.
Yeah.
Because they do know that they've made a mistake, at least most of them. Again, with Divine G, it is told to us that that he's more innocent.
Yeah.
Either way, though, they've found themselves in this maximum security prison, and they're utilizing art to express themselves and find some sort of hope. However, one element of the film inside of that I find really fascinating, again, circling back to Divine G and Clarence, and this is one of the more prominent cross sections of the film, because Clarence, at the beginning of the film anyway, he is the embodiment of that hardened prison life that we see in
What
a
you
lot of
expect.
movies.
Yeah.
He evokes this hard outer shell. He carries himself like he's some sort of kingpin of the prison yard.
Yep.
And he does carry himself wonderfully in the performance in that way. Whereas Divine Chi is the complete antithesis. He's kind, he's soulful, sees potential in art and everyone around him. But as the film unfolds, they end up having the opposite arc where Clarence allows the art to mold him in these unexpected ways, whereas Divine G, because of external factors, becomes cynical for a brief period of time.
Yeah.
And develops a little bit of a hardened outer shell. And seeing where those bumps in the road meet here is really great. Some of those ending scenes between those two characters, it is poignant for sure, but surprisingly quite funny as well.
Yeah.
And just utterly endearing. It is impossible not to love. And I fell head over heels in love with this film and that particular through line throughout the film.
Yeah. And I know we're going to get into it, but I mean, like, Macklin kind of dominates this movie. It's kind of hard to have Colman Domingo and you're like, well, who's the best actor in this movie? It's like, well, Macklin is I'm always blown away at somebody who, like this, allows himself to be this vulnerable about his own self and his own inadequacies. And I can't, obviously, I don't know Macklin personally. I can't speak to the truth behind the character and what has been evolved. I would imagine there's some layers of that, but at the same time, like, his ability to be as hardened as you said, like at the beginning, where you believe 100% the hardness of it all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his like willingness to want to be this actor and want to be in this artistic mold and realizing that there might be a way forward out of the world, out of the prison world with this. Like, he sees that as, it's not like it's so pure for wanting just the art of it all, and opposed to just like, he's not looking for an angle. Like, there's no angle, and everybody realizes there's no angle.
Yeah.
And once he realizes there's no angle, he kind of sets into it. And I like I said, I really like, I'm with you. I kind of like the ships in the night passing of personalities of these two characters, and them both being divine is kind of makes me, it's just a funny little coincidence. But it's just the idea of Domingo going like, okay, you know exactly who this character is, and as the film goes, you're just like, wow, I've kind of lost the thread of who this character, kind of keeping you on your toes. Where Macklin is the opposite, is he's very much molding into the person you want him to be, and he's raising up to that challenge and being like, this is who I am. And like you said, some of those end scenes, like the idea of a rolled down car window has never seemed more beautiful.
Oh my gosh. There in the end.
Oh man.
And I guess to be a little specific here, this isn't spoilery, but I do want to talk about the great irony that Clarence, who again comes off as this hardened kingpin of the prison yard, but there is something about him where he signs up and there's a fun little interaction between Sean and Divine and Clarence where they ask him, why did you sign up? And he doesn't quite, he's not able to articulate fully. He just knows there's something there that he wants to unleash.
Yeah.
And what is really hilarious to me, the first time we see Clarence manifest that in a tangible way, and this is early on in the film when they're auditioning for the play, he doesn't choose a character that you think he would, given how he's established. No, he chooses Hamlet. He's going to be Hamlet. That is hilarious to me. Like, this hardened gangster type personality is like, I'm gonna do Shakespeare. Like it's
Yeah.
just so good.
Yeah,
and he
there's
goes for it.
there's 1,000 things you could do in that situation. It's like, well, what's he going to do? It's like Hamlet's like, well, just the choice itself means something.
Yeah.
And
He could have been a pirate. There's pirates in this play. He could have been an Egyptian god.
and you know,
all kinds of stuff.
more than anything, breaking the Mummy's code sounds like a blast to have done. Like
It does.
really complex. Like if you're watching it, you're just like, I don't know what's going on here. But I mean, like it's an amalgamation of 1,000 different things. I want this, this, and this, and this. It's like,
Yeah.
let me see what I can do with it. I want it like, I don't think he gets a lot of, he has not been getting a lot of shine in the reviews for this, but I want to say like Paul Raci does an incredible job in this film.
Yeah,
Like
he's very good. Yeah.
like you kind of like, I was a little worried whenever I heard Paul Raci was in this film, because I was thinking, okay, is he going to be like a prisoner or something like that? And then he comes in and I'm like, well, as soon as I saw him and what his character was, I was like, this is a perfect Paul Raci performance. And it's the right type of role. And it's more of like a mechanism. He's more of like a mechanism than an actual character. But I mean, few people can be as quietly sensitive to other men as a voice box to like an emotional, like I'm the guy in the back of your head saying the things you should be thinking.
Yeah. No, in a lot of ways, he is the quintessential leader for these
Sure.
men, especially given the circumstances, because there is a tender quality to him where he wants to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
He encourages them to commit to the silliness, the goofiness, the satire, the comedy of the play. But he also wants to motivate them to greatness.
Yeah.
So when he sees that they're not giving their best, he's willing to give them honest feedback to provoke them to be their best. And that's what's great about his rapport here with Divine G, because there are times where he's trying to connect with one of these guys in particular, Macklin, and it's not quite entering Clarence in this cogent way. So they have this really great dynamic where, okay, Brent offers something to the table, and then Divine G is able to counter that with a quip or some sort of clarity that allows Clarence to tap into the character in this great way. And I love the dynamic of that throughout the film. There is a sensitivity. There's an understanding that, yes, these guys aren't professional actors. Of course they're not.
Yeah.
But we're also not here to be on Broadway. This is a way for these guys to express themselves, and understanding that or in a way that doesn't make these guys feel overwhelmed or that they're in the wrong place. That can be tricky, I feel like, in terms of writing that line at times. And the gracefulness of that in the writing and in the performances it's really something to see.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. Greg Kwedar was actually at the premiere whenever I was there in Dallas, and I had an opportunity to speak to him for a moment. And unfortunately, I spoke to him before I saw the film, so I didn't want to be like, "Congrats, oh, what an incredible film!" Like I hadn't seen it yet, but I was like, I had heard the buzz for it, and I asked him, I was like, "So you've done other films? Like him and Bentley were the director writers on Jockey, and the buzz on that." And I said, "Does this feel different?" And he specifically said, like, "Yes, this felt different from the jump. Like it was always." When he got the story, it was different. When he signed people on, it was different. When they were in there, he said it just felt like a different type of, like, it's not something you normally see, and it feels special in every sort of way along the way. And like it's funny having a character like Raci whenever like you have Kwedar and Bentley, who is a director as well. I mean, like, we are going to show the power of what a director can do. Like it's really kind of like a little metatextual aspect of it about how
that's a great point. Yeah.
How important a director can be if a director is in the right mindset and does not do the wrong things. You obviously a guy who knows how to talk to Divine G and Divine Eye the same way. Like he knows how to tailor a message, and it's a really fascinating kind of like a little bit. Look how good a director can be.
You're really you make a great point. I hadn't really thought about that specifically, but I do love the meta component that you have Kwedar directing Racy on how to direct the same individuals.
It's like I'm really curious the actual like mechanism of how that works. It's like okay, it's not going on. It's like okay, Paul, you're gonna say this. Like
like Kwedar should have just been the character,
right?
The same thing. No, that is fascinating though.
It's a fun little aspect of all that. And then, I think the other side of it is, I think there's a level of tenacity that this film really is trying to get across. And there's a little speech that Domingo and Macklin have whenever Domingo's trying to convince him to apply for parole, where he's like, well, what if they say no? Then you do it again. It's like, well, what if they goes no? Then you do it again. What if that goes on? You do it again. Like it's you get mad for a little bit and then you move forward. You have to keep going because you can never kind of give up on yourself in this situation. You always have to be moving forward. You can't ever, if you're staying still, you're dying, especially in a place like this. And it's all about propulsion.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how that hopefulness from Divine G specifically is what saves him in the end. Because again, of these parallel yet antithetical arcs between himself and Macklin, as we were talking about earlier, because it does take some patience from Divine G as it relates to Clarence.
100%.
They have that moment that you see in the trailer where Clarence is reserved about going into a dark corridor. You don't necessarily want to do that. But also he doesn't want to be told what to do initially. And there's a little bit of conflict there. But eventually that does dissipate a little bit, and Divine continues to show Clarence grace and patience, and he helps him with his performance, and they do develop a nice rapport. So when things start to reverse themselves with those two characters, and you see how Clarence sees the de-evolution of Divine G and the choices that he's making and the grief that he's experiencing there, the way that Clarence approaches Divine G, that is a direct result of Divine G investing in Clarence and that relationship. So without his own investment in Clarence, the ending of this film likely doesn't come to fruition. Like it doesn't play out that way. And maybe both of them are forever stuck in this cycle of prison life. But by maintaining that hopefulness and sticking to his convictions, even when Divine G does fall, so to speak, there is fruits to his labor, and because of his convictions earlier in the film, that allow him to find his own grace in the end. And I love that here.
I really like how you put that. It's like the seeds the seeds he plant eventually are sown for his own salvation. Like it's you essentially, how much do you want yourself to be saved? And his ability to continually go into this. And like you said, the film not getting bogged down in the minutia of, well, what's going on with the case. It's like, it's just kind of there. It's not, and there's no like the prison cliches you expect never come. It's all exactly. And even the actual, like, kind of cinematography as character, like the film is not necessarily shot in like these prison dour lights. It's shot pretty brightly. Like it's almost like it's a school campus, like and even the lockdown times are shot in a very specific way to where you're in prison, but it doesn't look like any other prison movie.
Without the insert shots of the barriers and the prison walls, you almost wouldn't know that it is a prison.
Yeah.
Because they're like in a gymnasium practicing, going over their lines. And even when they're outside, there is the prison in the background, but
Yeah.
you don't see the barbed wire and the
No.
walls.
Yeah.
It is shot as if they're outside of a school. So
Yeah.
it does take away from the I guess immediacy of them being trapped in
Yeah.
the prison.
Yeah.
And I think that allows for the emotion to feel a little bit more fervent,
Yes.
and the urgency of the relationships and how that blossoms throughout the film. And I just also love how it's shot in a way that feels spontaneous.
Yes.
There's a connective tissue that keeps its free spirit and emerge or urgency woven seamlessly, but there's a lot of sequences in this film that just feel like they're just hanging out. They're having a
Yeah.
great time. Again, it doesn't remind you of them being in prison at all. Like,
Yeah.
in fact, it's a little jarring at times when all of a sudden the film will cut to some sort of wide shot or they're
Yeah.
back in their cells, and it's like, oh yeah, these guys are in prison. It's
Yeah.
lights out.
And it also like it just has that level of sorry, I completely blanked out there for a second. But yeah, it's one of those things where the idea of them in prison and the idea of like that free flowingness you were talking about, like
Yeah.
whenever you have people, especially non-professional actors, if you make things too concrete and too like unfamiliar, rigid, it's hard to put those people in those positions. And I think it speaks really well to the idea of how this film is produced, because having that free flowing doesn't put as much pressure on actors who are not used to being in front of the camera like
sure.
this. And it allows that level of comfort and spontaneity to pop through. And that's some of the most fun laid back things are those spontaneous little moments and those fun little riffs between, and it doesn't feel overly manufactured. It's not like we're doing this in the script, say this line, repeat with this line. It's all very, but it makes it feel that much more real.
Yeah, exactly. It feels natural. It makes you wonder, or maybe the film is suggesting that is how these plays eventually develop.
Yeah.
It's them riffing, it's them having fun, figuring out the performance simply by being around each other and having a great time and practicing their lines with each other. Whether they're there in the gymnasium or when they're at lunch. Again, I can't remember the character's name, but there's one where he's just going over his lines over and over. And there's a great close-up shot of him in the cafeteria just monologuing to himself. He's going through his lines. It's like that's just them developing and continuing the art in a way that lifts their spirits. And that's what this is all about. And it is fascinating to see how that comes through. One element that I do want to speak to that we haven't talked about yet is the relationship between Divine G and Mike.
Yes.
Again, played by Sean San Jose here. That is another great dynamic. They're clearly very good friends. And they have some conversations in this film that are, in a lot of ways, the nucleus of the film.
Absolutely.
In particular, you think of that moment at night when they're being extremely vulnerable with each other, going back and forth. Man, that's one of the best scenes of the year, I think.
Absolutely. And it's shot with such warmth. Like it's supposed to be at night, but there's like this orange glow on both of them.
Yeah.
And it has this otherworldly, like San Jose who's sitting there and is incredible in this
very
monologue.
Good here.
So good. But he's kind of just telling this story, like you kind of see like the seeds of how his mindset is kind of going into this. Like a previous scene had talked about like, what's a good thing that what do you guys think of being outside this place? Everybody kind of has this very positive thing, and he actually kind of turns into a negative, and it kind of puts in where his mindset is. And then he talks very vulnerably about his life growing up and how he got into this position. And it's just heartbreakingly like you said, tender is the perfect word for it, because it's a guy who, in any other situation, the day he walks in, he would never say a word, anything close to the words that he is saying now. But because of the time and the breaking down of the barriers, what's the point of having the barriers if you've been in prison this long and you have this relationship with this person? Why don't you just go up to this and it's like, I'm going to break down exactly what's going on. And it is a remarkable scene.
It is truly breathtaking to watch. The emotion is really felt. And I absolutely love the performance there by Sean San Jose. It's really fantastic. I know Clarence Macklin has been receiving a lot of praise for this film, and deservedly so. His arc, his character is really great. But I do think Mike is equally a captivating character, and I agree with you. The way that whole sequence is composed and framed, the coloring of it is fantastic. And even the sound design, because as the camera is emphasizing one character, you hear the other, and it does sound as if they're talking through a cave.
Yeah.
And it does remind us again that they're in prison and in these different cells. And another moment that I love with the character as well is this scene where they're standing in a circle and Brent has asked them to think about a moment in their lives that, means something to them or that they would want to experience again. I can't remember exactly how he phrases
Something like
it.
that,
And ultimately, what it emphasizes are these moments that they think about, that they channel into their performances.
100%.
And they channel into their art. With Mike, it becomes the antithesis. His reaction to that scene, I think, is fascinating because what it reverberates is that he is using his own life and choices to inform his art. It is the complete opposite, where he's like, I don't want to think about anything other than this moment, and right now is I'm where I need to be right now. And I need to be expressing myself in this way right now. And the urgency that comes out of that, I think, is also really beautiful. Like, that's a really touching film or moment in the film that really struck a chord with me as well.
And it's kind of like a different type of approach to a positive. Like, it's not it doesn't necessarily frame that idea as being like, well, that's not what we're going to do here. And it's like, okay, well, as opposed to everybody else going like, this is a happy moment, and I bring that into this. It's like, no, this is making the happy for me. Like, and it's
exactly,
it's not you go from A to B to C. He's like, no, I'm going, C is the reason I go from B to A. Like, it's and the film doesn't judge him for that.
No.
It's very much this is his approach, and everybody goes, okay, and this is working. This is what we're going to go with. And it's the lack of judgment in this film across the board. It's very much a judge-free film. Like, it's in a prison movie, a villainless film.
Yeah.
It's you very easily could have thrown some mechanism. It's like even the parole board or this or that or whatever it is, you could have made somebody be like somebody to root against. There's nobody to root against. It's a room full of people to root for.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess you could state the parole board, but that moment is also fleeting. And I do think it offers some interesting insight into Divine G's character.
Sure.
Most importantly, what it serves, though, is, again, this unexpected arc that the character goes on that is in contrast to Clarence, as we talked about earlier. So it's very, very necessary in provoking Divine G in a specific way that I think is really good. But you make a great point. There really is no antagonist here. And while there's not much conflict, and I don't think this is a film that needs a whole lot of conflict given its heart and its purity, but the closest thing to an antagonist is Divine G himself.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Which, funny enough, given how he is presented at the beginning of the film, but in the end, absolutely. I mean, this is a lovely, beautiful experience that is very soulful and it speaks to the power of art in ways
sure.
that I absolutely love.
Yeah, and it's like you think prison movie, and you kind of have an expectation going in, and then after you're done, you're like, man, that was just a gentle, like
Yeah.
I can't say it's a breezy film because it does hit some hard topics, but I also
Yeah.
find it very easy to watch. Like
Yeah. I agree.
it was not an unpleasant viewing experience.
Yeah.
It's just unlike other stuff you see. There's just that level of male vulnerability, and to present that male vulnerability, like I said, without the judgment and without like there's never like a snickering, like, haha, that's gay, ha ha ha. It's just like, it's just presented as what it is. There's never
Yeah.
there's never the wink of like, oh, what does this mean? Or any of that kind of intimation or any of that. It just goes, it's so sincere. Sincere is the best word you
Yeah.
said. I agree.
Yeah, it's very sincere. And I think to complement what you're saying there about the lack of judgment in these characters, and that is very much the case, but simultaneously, it gives these guys permission to be vulnerable.
Sure.
Like it wants them to tap into something that they might not have even known was there.
Yep.
And seeing how that crystallizes here in these guys and as a collective, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, you just don't walk into a prison movie expecting it to
No.
be as vulnerable as this is, but
Yeah.
there aren't many movies that want to express male vulnerability in this way.
No.
And
Yeah.
given our culture, especially at the moment,
Mm.
it's not going to hit the zeitgeist in a very big way as a result, but I think as a moment of counterculture
Yeah.
and what male vulnerability can look like, I think it is an important work of art in that regard.
I agree. It's a, like you said, I would not expect this film to be like $100 million earner. It's just not that. It's not that type of film, and I wish it would. I think it deserves it. I think
I
it's
agree.
it's an incredible film. I think like it's a very rewatchable film too, because I would love to see like the little things, like a performance I was not thinking of, or maybe paying attention. Like you said, the excellent sound design that's a little understated, and the simplicity of how it's shot and not overcomplicating everything. But I mean, it's just not like what's the hook essentially? What's the thing that's gonna? It's like, oh, this is a super super sensitive male movie. You're like, okay, well, what am I gonna do with that? And it's like it's hard to. This is a difficult film to market to a mass audience. Whenever you have, like, not disparaging those films, but whenever you have Deadpool and Wolverine and Alien Romulus, where this fits in that mix.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think the filmmakers did such an incredible job of even getting to this point and presenting of what it had.
Yep.
I think that's the achievement in of itself.
Yep, I completely agree. The last thing that I want to add is the score by Bryce Dessner.
Ah, yes.
I am a big fan of the Dessner brothers.
Okay.
I feel like I don't listen to their music all that much outside of film. Maybe I should. I think I very much should, because
Okay.
everything they do on the film side has been incredible to me. Going back to even something like Jockey from 2021, their work for Cyrano is out of this world. It is
I love
unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Even the score for Bardo last year or 2 years ago, whenever that came out, I thought was really great. So like, and I think the score here is subtle, but again, it taps into those sincere, elegant qualities that we've been talking about. that I absolutely adore. So I just, moral of the story, I need to start listening to them outside of even the film world, because everything they do is gold to me. So
Yeah, I'm
love it.
I'm a big fan of the National in general, and so like every time I hear them, it's like it's obviously, you know, they're not like kind of like the band version of this film. Like they're hard to be like, oh, did you hear that new National song on the hit on the
Yeah.
top 40 rate? It's like you're never gonna hear a National song, and if you do, it's gonna be like kind of a one-off like indie type. So
Yeah.
it's
I
but
need to listen to them. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
they
their
have a
film
lot of
stuff is awesome. I've always
yeah,
loved it.
and I agree with you on Cyrano. I'm a big writer of that movie in general,
Oh yeah.
and the
It is
music
so underrated.
so underrated, and
Yeah.
yeah, and they have a lot. They have incredible stuff, and I've always
Yeah.
I appreciate just how they approach. Like it's very unconventional, and it's an unconventional way of doing it. It's a perfect fit for what this film has, and I agree with you. I think it's excellent.
Yeah. I absolutely adore it. So I think my biggest problem is I don't really listen to bands in general as much,
Okay,
mostly because of time. I don't have a whole lot of time.
sure.
And when I do, I'm usually listening to film scores because I'm a nerd. So so that's what I'm listening to. But I think I might make an exception because I do really love their work on the film side. So
I'm usually the opposite. Like it really really has to stand out for a film score to like catch me. Like
okay,
whenever people are like, "Oh, you hear about the film?" I was like, "Sure." Like obviously the big ones obviously stand out whenever something is very specific.
nice. Okay,
It gets me, but generally scores aren't something I ever think about generally. But when it does for a reason.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts here on Sing Sing?
I love this film. I do think it's the best film of the year. It's still at my number one. I think it would take something pretty impressive to unseat it. But it's not a type of film like don't ex- like the you have to be willing to take what it's giving. You
Mm,
can't just go in there going like, all right, impress me, Sing Sing. It's like, no. You have like it's not the
yeah.
impressing type. It's you have to be in the mood for it and in the right frame of mind to understand what it's at. But once you understand it, once you get on, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a fantastic movie. I cannot recommend it enough.
100%.
And that is a nice change of pace because I feel like a lot of the movies I've seen lately, as far as 2024 releases go
Mhm.
anyway, they have been a little more challenging to recommend. I don't
Yeah.
even know if I want to get into the whole Romulus conversation. That film has been a little bit polarizing. Same thing with Cuckoo, and even a movie that I love, like M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. I can't recommend that to everybody.
Yeah.
That is a movie for Shyamalan nerds like myself, and Josh Hartnett nerds, I guess, as well.
Yeah,
So like,
I agree. Like if I look at my like, oh hey, I'm not gonna like my tell. How do I convince my mom to watch I Saw the TV Glow? Or
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's like,
Oh, and
hey, hey, I'm gonna ask my aunt to watch Love Lives Bleeding. No, like these. You got they're great. I really like these films, but it's hard to convey like what you want to like.
Exactly.
They're
That's why
challenging.
exactly. It's hard to like broadly recommend it. Another film I was going to bring up that I saw this last month is The People's Joker, and
Yeah,
similarly, that is such a specific movie that I think is really great, but I can't simply recommend that to everybody. Or even on the mainstream side of things, like I caught up with A Quiet Place Day One way later
yeah,
than everyone
yeah.
else did, and I love that film, but that is an $80 million movie about trying to find a slice of pizza as aliens invade.
Sure, sure.
I mean, that is just not going to register with a lot of people, and that's fine. But like, I love the tender, quiet moments of that film, and there's plenty of them. So,
Yeah,
You know?
and yeah, the most like you even have some more accessible films, like DD being a good example of
Yeah.
like oh well, you still like have to have that level of like uncomfortable feeling with it.
Yeah,
It's
and I love
20
Dee Dee as well. So
oh
like,
yeah,
yeah,
I saw DD and Sing Sing back to back
oh
at the
man,
Dallas
that's
International
that's a
Film Festival.
glorious day.
That was a great day. I went straight from DD to Sing Sing. Great
Oh
day.
my gosh, that is absolutely the best day anyone
Absolutely.
could have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm like, I haven't done any sort of wrestling with my 2024 list. So I don't know where those two films were ranked, but they're certainly among my very favorites. There's no doubt
Sure.
about it.
Sure.
Yeah, both of them. Dee
Yeah.
Dee, Sing Sing. I can't recommend either of them enough. So
I agree. Absolutely.
love it. And some of my favorite performances of the year in Sing Sing.
100%.
So
Yes.
good. With that said, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, you can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please reach out to us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. Ben, thanks for being here. Really do appreciate you being here, my friend.
My distinct pleasure, sir. It's been a blast as always.
Tell us where we can find you on social media and your work online.
You can find me on Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and nebisbin, Instagram neb.isbin. My website is icecreamforfreaks.com. I write all over the place, and including in session film occasionally.
Yeah.
I guest on other pods a lot. I have a podcast called Target Audience. I release episodes weekly, and guess what comes out next week? It is Mr. JD Duran.
Yeah.
Talking about Midnight Special. So
Yeah. That
have
was
new
a fun
episode.
conversation.
That was a fun one. Got a bunch of new, like coming off the heels of Solo.
Oh, gosh,
like
yeah.
talking about really changing pace here. So my
Seriously, yeah.
my podcast is on Twitter at Target Odd Pod. You can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, please go subscribe. Really great show. And as he stated, you can look forward to my appearance coming soon, talking Midnight Special. It was a great time. I really do appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
Just want to plug quickly on this week's main show, episode 598. We talked about our top 5 scenes of the 2000s. So we are prepping for our Best of the Decade awards that is happening in a couple of weeks. And, no small task, just talking about the 5 best scenes, not just film scenes of the 2000s. That was a really fun conversation. Next week on the show will be our 2000 retrospective, talking about our top 10 movies of that year. And then the following week, we will round out this series with our best of the decade for the 2000s. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a review for Alien Romulus out this week as well, if you want to go and check that out. And we'll have a new Chasing the Gold. We'll have New Women in Session out this week as well. So, as always, a busy week. Be sure to subscribe. Ben, any final thoughts on anything before we get out of here for this episode?
Just thank you so much. I really liked Alien Romulus, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's okay. A lot of people did. Brendan and I might be a little bit on an island there. That's okay.
It's fine.
That's fine.
It's fine. Different strokes. It's fine.
Yeah, like I'm glad people are liking it, and I don't completely dislike it. I just found myself frustrated with it, but at least you're willing to embrace or accept that I have things I like and dislike, and you're not just internet mad at me as a lot of people were.
Just don't be the lady in my screening who brought her baby.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't be that lady.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I'm not gonna do that. As far as a final thought for me, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening, especially to these retrospectives that we've done over the last 10 years, because they're often a lot of work. And I look forward to capping all of this off with our 2000s Best of the Decade awards. That show will be long. It will probably come close to 9 hours. Who knows? Actually, I don't know. It probably won't be that long, but it'll be long. It'll be a good time, though, so stay tuned for all of that. With that said, thanks, Ben, for being here once again. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.